Have you ever actually wondered if you could sue an entire country? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, right? But it is a very real and, let me tell you, a very complex part of international law. So today, we're going to dive into the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, the official rulebook for how you can legally take a foreign nation to court right here in the U.S. So let's just get right to it. The big question, can you really sue a foreign country? Well, the short answer is yes. But, and this is a big but, it's not simple. You can't just file a lawsuit the way you would against a person or a company down the street. There is this massive legal wall you have to figure out how to climb first. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle the main problem with suing a nation. Then we'll unpack the law that gives us a solution, the FSIA. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how you actually let a country know it's being sued. And finally, we'll talk about why this whole complicated process is so incredibly important for keeping the peace. Okay, first up, the fundamental challenge of suing a nation. It is so much harder than you'd think. You can't just, stroll up to the French embassy with a stack of legal documents, hand them to the first person you see and call it a day. There's this really powerful legal idea that stands squarely in your way. And it all boils down to this, sovereign immunity. This is a huge principle in international law. It's been around for centuries, and it basically says one country can't be dragged into court in another country. It's all built on this idea that all nations are equals, that they're all sovereigns. The best way to think about it is like this. Sovereign immunity is like a legal suit of armor. It's this invisible shield that protects a nation from lawsuits. You can't just smash your way through it. You need a very, very specific key to get it open. And that key? Well, that's what we're talking about next. It's called the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, or the FSIA for short. This is the American law that gives you the exact roadmap for getting past that suit of armor and finally getting a foot inside the courthouse door. Okay, so here's the absolute most important thing to get. The FSIA is the only way you can sue a foreign country in the United States, period. It lays out these very specific exceptions to that immunity we just talked about. Like, for instance, if a foreign state-owned airline gets into a business deal in the U.S. and then breaks the contract, well, that's a commercial activity, and immunity probably won't apply. The FSIA doesn't just list the exceptions, it tells you the exact procedure you have to follow just to get the case started. And for all you legal eagles out there who love the details, the specific instruction manual is found right here in Section 1608 of the law. This part covers what's known as service of process, which is just the formal legal term for officially telling someone they're being sued. And trust me, getting this step 100% right is absolutely critical. So how does this actually play out? Let's break down the super specific step-by-step process for formally serving a foreign country, which is all laid out in Section 168, subsection A. Now, here's what's so fascinating about this. This is not a menu of options. It's not a buffet where you can pick and choose. It is a strict 4-step waterfall. You have to try step 1 first. If that doesn't work, then you move to step 2, and so on down the line. You have to start with any special arrangement that might exist. If there isn't one, you look for an international treaty, like the Hague Convention. No luck there? Then it's on to sending mail directly to their foreign minister. And only as a last resort, do you go through the formal diplomatic channels with help from the U.S. State Department. And look, the law itself spells this out in black and white. It explicitly says these methods are listed in descending order of preference. This is not a friendly suggestion. It is a direct command. If you skip a step, if you try to get clever, your entire case can get thrown out of court before it even really begins. Precision is everything here. But wait a minute, what if you're not suing the country of France itself, but maybe you're going after its state-owned railway company? Well, the law is smart enough to know there's a difference, and it actually gives you a whole separate process for those kinds of agencies and companies. So the process for serving a state-owned company, which is covered in subsection B, is generally a lot more flexible. And that makes sense, right? The law understands that these businesses often act just like regular corporations, so it allows for methods that are way more common in normal lawsuits, like just delivering the papers to an officer or a manager. It's a much more practical approach for a company that's out there doing business in the world, not just conducting diplomacy. So why? Why all this complexity? Why not just make it simple? Well, that brings us to the real heart of it, why this whole process truly matters. It's all about a very, very delicate balancing act.
At the end of the day, this whole careful process is about balancing the right of a single person to get justice with the respect that we owe to another country's independence. It creates a clear, predictable road to follow that honors our international agreements and, maybe most importantly, helps prevent a lawsuit from turning into a major diplomatic crisis. It's how our rule of law carefully finds the key to that suit of armor without starting a global fight. And all of this leaves us with one final, really fundamental question to think about. The FSIA, it provides a path, but it's a pretty narrow one. It really forces us to ask, at what point should that ancient shield of sovereign immunity be lowered to make way for one person's right to justice? The law gives us an answer, but whether it's always the right answer, well, that's a debate that's constantly raging in international law.